The day I knew I was done started like any other, with the flickering hallway light that's needed replacing since the Obama administration, the burnt coffee smell wafting from the break room, and my name Natalie Quinn, missing from the birthday board for the 8th straight year. I didn't cry. I didn't slam doors. I just stood there alone by the fridge staring at a sheet cake for Ashley from marketing, who started 6 months ago and still thought my name was Nancy. That's when it hit me. I could vanish from that building and it would take them 6 payroll cycles to notice. Maybe 7 if Eldridge was on vacation. 12 years. Same gray cubicle. Same ergonomically offensive chair. Same ID badge from 2011 where my hair was 2 shades lighter, and my hope hadn't yet been crushed into powder. You ever see someone age in Excel sheets? That's me. Records coordinator for Lexton Systems, a company that thought putting fake plants in reception counted as employee wellness. If ghosts got dental, I'd qualify. I used to speak up in meetings, until I noticed my words echoing back a week later from Brad's mouth like they were his divine revelation. The same Brad I trained, by the way. Twice. First when he was my junior, and again when they promoted him to oversee the workflow I built from scratch. My reward? A $20 Amazon gift card with T-checks for your hard work. Scribbled in blue pen. No signature. Real personal touch. After a while you stop raising your hand. You stop staying late. Well, unless you're me, and the audit trail is so broken you have to stay behind after everyone else leaves just to make sure the quarterly numbers won't trigger a federal review. Midnight shifts, lights dimmed, fixing the same patterns of negligence over and over again. Like a janitor with clearance codes. My name was on nothing, but my fingerprints were everywhere. Let me pause real quick because if you're still here, you're the type who actually listens. Unlike management. So do me a tiny favor, yeah? Click the like button, maybe subscribe. 97% of people listen to these stories without ever subscribing. Takes a second and it really helps the team keep telling stories that matter like this one. Ones that never make the holiday newsletter. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even bitter, really. Just tired in that bone-deep, foggy way that doesn't go away with weekends. I didn't need confetti or applause or some bullshit women in tech shout-out from HR. I just wanted once before I walked out of that building forever to be acknowledged. Seen. For the 12 years I gave without asking for much more than basic human decency. But apparently even that was too much. So I started writing something. Not a speech. Not a rant. Just a letter. Short. Professional. Resignation effective in 2 weeks. Gratitude for the experience. I CC'd my boss. Sent a copy to HR. Sat back. Waited. And that's when the silence began. The walls didn't close in all at once. They crept. Little signs here and there like the annual org chart missing names you swore were still around last week, or the way finance suddenly forgot how to make eye contact in the break room. Someone said the word efficiency, and the whole floor went tense, like we were all about to be replaced with robots that didn't need bathroom breaks or health insurance. They called it a strategic restructuring, which is corporate for, some of you won't survive the fiscal quarter. And just like that, the smiling started. Not the nice kind. More like the shark-toothed grins of upper management trying to look human while deciding who to throw overboard. HR became way too chipper, like they were auditioning for a pharmaceutical ad. Hey Natalie, how are we doing today? We. As if there was a collective soul in that building instead of 1,000 individual people just trying to stay on the damn payroll. Mr. Eldridge, my boss, if you could call a man who hadn't read a full email since 2019 a boss, stopped acknowledging my weekly reports altogether. I still sent them on time every Thursday at 10 a.m. sharp because I'm not sloppy. Never was. But I started to notice they weren't even getting marked read. He'd just grin when I passed his glass office, chatting with someone half his age who thought compliance was a font setting. So I did the thing we all do when we're hoping the ship isn't sinking as fast as it looks. I scheduled a check-in. Just 15 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Wanted to talk about growth plans, future goals. Whether there was still room for someone like me in a company that now valued buzzwords over backbone. He didn't even sit up straight. Just leaned back, sipped from a mug that said "World's okayest boss," and chuckled. Natalie, he said like we were pals, we don't measure tenure, we measure impact. I nodded like that made sense. Like the last decade I gave them could be erased because I didn't write a viral Slack message or clap back in meetings with enough spunk to impress the intern committee. Like late nights logging risk reports or fixing database conflicts didn't count because I didn't post about it with a hashtag. That sentence lodged itself in me like a splinter in the soft part of your thumb. Tiny but deep. We measure impact. I started thinking about what that really meant. About how, if I did disappear, maybe I could still make an impact. One loud enough to echo. Not the kind they applaud, but the kind they remember. The kind that leaves marks in all the places they thought were safe. The kind of impact that doesn't ask for permission to exist. I wrote it with care, probably more than they deserved. Used the company template. Added the right salutations. Made sure the font matched corporate standards because heaven forbid the woman ghosting out of her job didn't adhere to brand guidelines. I even thanked them. For the opportunities. For the learning experiences. For the support. Lies were taught to sprinkle in so no one feels too uncomfortable reading the truth. 2 weeks' notice. Graceful. Cordial. The kind of exit that leaves no blood on the carpet. I sent it off 6 weeks before the end of Q3. Gave them time to process, to transfer accounts, to start the paperwork. Gave them the chance to handle it right. HR got it. I CC'd Eldridge. Checked the timestamps. It was received. And then nothing. No, thank you for your service. No, please let us know if you'd like an exit interview. Not even the decency of a bounce-back message. I gave them 12 years. They couldn't give me 12 words. I waited until Monday, assuming maybe they were just slow. Maybe the systems were delayed, maybe IT had a hiccup. Gave them the benefit of the doubt. That same morning I sent a follow-up light, professional tone. Just wanted to confirm receipt. Still nothing. That kind of silence doesn't feel neutral. Feels weaponized. Like being erased while you're still standing in the room. I watched Eldridge walk past my desk twice that week. Didn't say a word. Just whistled something off-key like always, the sound bouncing off cubicle walls like it belonged there more than I did. HR passed me in the hallway. Smiled that Stepford smile. Not a flicker of recognition in their eyes. Not a single mention of the email. That week, I updated my resume. Not because I needed it, but because I hadn't looked at it in years and the blank space where achievements should have been hit me harder than I expected. I added bullet points. Cleaned up language. But I couldn't shake the weight of what wasn't there. No awards, no promotions, no leadership roles. Just the kind of quiet, invisible stability that keeps companies upright and goes completely unnoticed. By Friday it was obvious. They weren't going to acknowledge it. Maybe they thought I was bluffing. Maybe they thought if they ignored me long enough I'd stay. Like a chair you forget to replace until it collapses under someone important. They didn't see me leaving as a risk. They didn't see me at all. The silence was louder than any insult. It screamed across my inbox, echoed through the passive smiles, hissed through every ignored message. You don't matter. You never did. Not to them. But I was starting to realize I might still matter in ways they hadn't anticipated. I didn't plan to hear it. I was just grabbing tea, same chipped mug, same sad Lipton packet from the bulk box HR bought in 2014 and never replaced. The break room was mostly empty. Just the hum of the fridge and muffled conversation bleeding through the door Eldridge never bothered to close during his ego parades. She just wants attention, he said with a chuckle that could corrode drywall. She'll cool off. People like her always do. People like her. I froze. Not dramatically, no gasps, no clatter of mugs. Just a stillness sudden and heavy. Like every cell in my body called a meeting and voted to shut down emotionally for maintenance. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was realization. The kind that creeps in cold and stays lodged behind your ribs like a misplaced breath. That was how he saw me. How they all saw me. Not as a person, not even as a risk, but as a temporary static charge, something that would dissipate with time and neglect. The resignation wasn't a surprise to him. It was an inconvenience. A flare-up of a forgettable employee who didn't know her place. Quietly useful and permanently ignorable. He thought silence was a finish line. That by ghosting me they'd won. That if they just waited long enough, I'd fade back into the beige wallpaper of Lexton systems like a good little asset. But silence, as it turns out, is not always submission. Sometimes it's staging. That night I didn't cry. Didn't vent to a friend over wine or draft a snarky Facebook post for 5 likes and a pity comment. I just went home, fed my cat, took off my heels and opened my personal laptop. No rage, no shaking hands. Just clarity. I clicked open a folder buried under layers of decoys labeled Budget 2020 and birthday photos. Its real name was Insurance. Inside were 4 years' worth of emails, screenshots, flagged audit discrepancies, meeting recordings, memos with signatures, policy violations so dense and layered, I could have stitched together a quilt and covered the entire C-suite in compliance breaches. There were timestamps from training sessions that never happened but were billed anyway. Messages from Eldridge himself brushing off flagged discrepancies with phrases like, "Not critical," and "Let it slide, we're under deadline." A spreadsheet I was copied on once by accident that detailed adjustments to vendor invoices that didn't line up with the expense reports I filed the same month. A performance review that never reached HR because I watched Eldridge delete it from the shared drive. I never meant to collect it all. It just built up, like mold in the walls, like rot beneath paint. All those moments where I thought, that's not right, and filed it away, not knowing what I was waiting for. Now I knew. This wasn't a petty archive. It was ammunition. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt armed. Week 3 passed without a whisper. My badge still worked. My desk was still assigned. My name still showed up on team rosters like a ghost who hadn't gotten the memo. I watched the office carry on, business as usual. Ashley from marketing still burned popcorn every afternoon. Brad still took credit for data he didn't understand. And Eldridge still strutted around like a man who'd never once felt consequences tighten their grip around his throat. They'd made their decision. Ignore me long enough and I'd go away quietly. No paperwork, no exit interview, no complications. Just vanish like a support ticket marked resolved, even though the server's still on fire. So I sent one more message. This time there were no pleasantries. No hope this finds you well. Just a subject line that said exactly what needed saying. Formal termination notice. Clause 14b. Inside the email I included the original resignation, unedited, dated and still ignored. I attached my final time logs, with red highlighted rows showing 73 hours of unpaid overtime across 6 months. Not off the books like they like to pretend. Fully documented, logged through their own system, screenshots included. Then came the crown jewel. 6 PDFs of falsified audit summaries, each with Eldridge's name typed at the bottom. One even had his sloppy digital signature, the kind he thought made him look important but always came out looking like a toddler got a hold of a stylus. Every violation was organized, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with company policy. I ended the email with one sentence. Please confirm receipt at your earliest convenience. I didn't expect a reply, but I expected a reaction. The thing about real damage is, it's quiet at first. There's a moment just before the structure starts to creak, where everything feels too still. Like the system hasn't realized yet that its foundation's been sawed through. That's the silence I was listening for. The delay before the scream. I sent the email at 8:17 a.m. and went about my day like nothing happened. Filed a few lingering documents. Cleaned out my desk drawer. Left the corporate mug, took my own. Said nothing to anyone. No dramatic announcements. Just observed. Every time a Slack notification popped up, I didn't flinch. Every hallway laugh that wasn't about me was one less I had to carry. I walked past Eldridge's office once, saw him leaning back in his chair mid-joke. He didn't know yet, but he would. That's the thing about impact. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in an attachment. And sometimes the loudest sound in the world is the click before someone realizes what they've just opened. Friday arrived with the same dead fluorescent glow it always had. I woke up calm, more rested than I'd felt in months. No nerves. No sadness, just a steady pulse of resolve. My last scheduled day. My quiet exit. Except of course nothing about this was going to stay quiet for long. They still hadn't opened it. 3 days. No read receipt. No reply. No calendar invites. Just a vacuum of silence as if my formal termination under Clause 14b didn't exist. As if I hadn't handed them a loaded weapon with their fingerprints all over it. But ignorance, like immunity, always has an expiration date. I packed up the last of my drawer, Nothing dramatic. A photo of my cat, the good pens they never reordered. A worn notebook with a doodle from 2013 that reminded me I once had fun here. I left the company mouse. Thought about smashing it. Didn't. I didn't need to scream. I just needed to walk out. At reception, the new intern, Emma, I think, looked up from her clipboard with this hesitant, almost apologetic expression. HR said not to let you leave just yet. She said it gently, like I was someone worth talking to. Like maybe she hadn't been here long enough to be trained out of empathy. I followed her gaze toward the glass conference room, where the light was on and the tension was already bleeding through the walls. The kind of meeting where no one's sipping coffee, where people stop pretending. I saw the moment it happened. Eldridge, lounging at the head of the table, finally clicked the mouse and opened the email. My email. The subject line glared back at them like a warning flare. Formal termination notice, Clause 14b. First, nothing. Just a shift in posture. A pause. Then he leaned forward slowly, like maybe proximity would make the attachments lie. His smirk cracked. HR's director, the one who once told me I was too detail-oriented for leadership, pressed her hand to her mouth. One by one, they clicked through the documents. Each attachment a landmine. Screenshots. Timestamps. Audit fraud in black and white. Falsified logs signed by the man now turning paler by the second. It was like watching a slow-motion avalanche. One flicked file cascading into the next, and with every page, the weight of what they'd ignored for years finally landed square on their shoulders. I didn't smile. I didn't move. I just stood there behind the glass, invisible for one last moment, watching them realize who they'd been sitting on all this time. Not a doormat. Not a ghost. A fuse. A compliance-flavored bomb ticking quietly beneath their negligence, waiting for someone to actually check their inbox. For years I thought my power was gone. That being passed over, overlooked, dismissed had chipped it away until nothing was left. Turns out it wasn't gone. It was buried under their unread messages. And now it was wide open. Loud. Blinding. Irrefutable. The unraveling didn't explode. It leaked slow at first, then all at once. A compliance officer I'd never met in person suddenly appeared in the conference room doorway, holding a printout of my email like it was a biohazard. HR scrambled to explain the situation with their best poker faces, but the flailing had already begun. You could feel it in the air. The stench of panic dressed up as professionalism. 15 minutes later, legal was on speakerphone. The tone in the room changed from, "Let's clarify this misunderstanding," to "Who's liable for what?" I stood outside, still holding my coat, watching as clipboards vanished and laptops shut with sharp clicks. HR reps scurried like they just realized the fire alarm wasn't a drill. No one dared to look at me. Not anymore. Eldridge tried to play it cool, cracking one of his usual weak jokes, something about clerical confusion, and how Natalie's always been meticulous, maybe too meticulous. He gave that lazy chuckle, the one he used when pretending to be above accountability. It landed like a brick. Then someone pulled up the audit logs. One by one, my original reports loaded on the screen. Time-stamped. Unedited. Forwarded multiple times. The signatures. The dates. The policy numbers. The edits that never should have happened. It all synced. It was all traceable. Every forged number. Every altered review. Every missing acknowledgement. Recoverable. Admissible. Undeniable. That's when the laughter died in Eldridge's throat. HR, once a fortress of polite neglect, turned suddenly forensic. I heard one of them say, "Check her SharePoint permissions. How far back does this go?" Another whispered to the legal rep, "This might trigger escalation protocol." The same people who once couldn't remember what department I worked in were now combing through my email history like it held nuclear codes. And it did, in a way. I wasn't a resignation anymore. I was a whistleblower. That word, once taboo, started circling like a shark fin beneath the corporate waters. Eyes darted. Calls were muted mid-sentence. Nobody said it out loud, but I saw it in the stiffening shoulders, the clipped tones, the glances thrown toward exit doors that suddenly felt too close. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was radioactive. Watching it unfold from the hallway felt like standing in a planetarium, witnessing constellations rearrange themselves after a star collapses. Slow, surreal, oddly quiet. My entire career, they trained me to be small, efficient background support. And now they couldn't unsee me if they tried. I thought I'd feel vindicated, powerful, maybe even smug. But standing there, code in hand, watching their calm turn to chaos, it felt strange. Like watching your old reflection shatter in a mirror you never realized was cracked. 12 years of being the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who didn't make waves. And now, they couldn't look away. By 5 o'clock, the office had the stillness of a place that knew it had been caught. Phones were quieter. Voices were lower. The usual end-of-day shuffle was replaced with cautious glances and rapid key tapping, as people forwarded emails to themselves and double-checked calendars they used to ignore. The weight of consequence had finally arrived. And it wasn't subtle. Security showed up without ceremony. Just a tap on Eldridge's glass door, a quiet exchange, and a long walk down the hallway he used to strut like it was a red carpet. No yelling. No drama. Just a man stripped of his smugness, his badge clipped neatly to the folder he wasn't allowed to take home. HR claimed it was voluntary, of course. The internal email called it a transition of priorities, which I assume is code for, don't let the door hit you on your way to legal consultation. But everyone knew. You could see it in the way no one made eye contact with the departing director, or the way the admin assistant deleted her last Slack message mid-typing and shut her laptop with sudden finality. The merger, the big one they'd been hyping up for months, froze. Not paused. Frozen. Compliance flagged the deal, pending a full-scale internal audit and integrity review. That's what happens when falsified audits go unchecked for years, and the person holding the receipts finally speaks. They tried to spin it as a routine review, but nothing about the faces in that building looked routine. Executives went dark. Project leads held emergency meetings with blinds drawn. The whole place started breathing differently. And then the memo went out. A plain, sterile email titled, Organizational Realignment and Investigation Summary. Beneath the legalese and buzzwords, one line stood out in bold, unmissable font. Reporting source and Quinn. Not Natalie from Records. Not longtime employee. Just a name, listed like a footnote in their downfall. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't a fixture or a fallback. I was the cause. The catalyst. The one name they couldn't redact or ignore. But I didn't linger. I didn't stick around to watch the vultures descend or hear the water cooler conspiracies unfold. There were no victory laps. No champagne in my honor. No dramatic slow claps. Just a quiet seismic shift, like the ground had moved beneath them, and none of them knew how far down it went yet. I didn't need to witness it to feel it. I had already walked out and left the doors wide open behind me. It came in a cream-colored envelope with no return address, just my name, typed neatly like it belonged somewhere official. No fanfare. No bold headlines. Just a letter tucked between two folded pieces of paper, both stamped, signed, and sterile. Settlement approved. Restitution enclosed. Thank you for your diligence. That was it. No apologies. No admissions. Just a quiet acknowledgement that what happened. That the 12 years I gave weren't erased. That the damage they ignored had a cost, and now it was calculated, certified, and cut into a check. I didn't cry. Didn't even blink hard. I just sat at my usual booth in the diner off Main, tucked back by the window where the light hits just right in the afternoon. Same chipped mug I'd been drinking from since before the pandemic, same weak tea that tasted like nostalgia and dust. I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it face down beside my plate. Outside, people moved like nothing had changed. Delivery trucks. School kids. Tired parents. No one knew that 2 months earlier, I dropped a boulder into a glass lake and walked away as the cracks formed. I liked it that way. The waitress, older, kind eyes, probably saw more than she let on, came by and topped off my tea. Rough day? She asked, nodding toward the envelope like maybe it held a court summons or a death notice. I looked at it for a moment, then back at her. No, I said and smiled faintly. Just a quiet one. Because it was. No headlines. No LinkedIn posts. No press releases with my name under some triumphant banner. Just silence. But not the kind I used to drown in. This silence felt clean. Complete. Like something had finally ended without needing an audience. They'd said I wanted attention, that I was causing drama, that I just needed to cool off, and I'd come crawling back like a good little background character. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want attention. I wanted to be heard once, and when I finally was, the whole building went silent.